The lights went out without warning. One moment, the grand marble lobby of the skyscraper gleamed under chandeliers, the next, it was swallowed in pitch-black silence. Then came the panic. Screams, hurried footsteps, the sound of glass shattering somewhere in the distance. In the middle of it all stood Daniel Hayes, a janitor in his worn gray uniform, holding a broom in one hand and a lunchbox in the other. His first thought wasn't about himself, it was about the group of children he had just seen visiting the building's daycare. His heart thudded. Somewhere in the darkness, small voices were crying. Daniel had been through blackouts before. Not here, but in his old apartment building when he couldn't afford the bills. He knew how fear grew in the dark, how the unknown could make you feel like the walls were closing in. "Kids! Stay calm, I'm coming to you," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. He dropped his broom, gripped his lunchbox like a lifeline, and moved toward the sound of the cries. His boots scuffed against the marble, every step measured, guided only by memory of the building's layout. In the daycare, 5 children huddled in a corner, their teacher fumbling for her phone's flashlight. "Mr. Hayes," she gasped in relief when his voice reached them. "We're getting you all out," he said firmly. His voice was calm, but inside, his mind raced. He knew the emergency lights weren't kicking in, something was wrong. The backup generators must have failed. That meant the elevators were dead, and stairwells could be just as dangerous in pitch black. He pulled a small LED flashlight from his lunchbox, a cheap one he always carried because, as he liked to say, you never know when the world might go dark. The stairwell was their only way down. But when Daniel opened the door, a wave of heat rose from below. Something electrical had failed badly, maybe a small fire. The smell of burning wires was sharp and bitter. He tightened his jaw. "All right, new plan," he said. "We go down one floor at a time. Keep your hand on the wall, follow my voice, and don't run." They moved slowly, Daniel leading with his flashlight beam cutting a thin path through the dark. Behind him, small hands clutched each other, the children whispering nervously. Halfway down, they heard footsteps rushing toward them. A man's voice called out, "Wait! Who's there?" The beam caught a tall figure in a suit, sweat dripping from his temple. Daniel recognized him instantly, it was Martin Graves, the CEO of the company. The man who barely noticed Daniel during the day, who passed him like invisible wallpaper in the lobby. "I heard your voice," Martin said breathlessly. "Please, I'll follow you." For a moment, Daniel hesitated. But now wasn't the time for pride. "Stay behind the kids," he instructed. "They go first." They moved again, floor by floor. At one landing, they found a group of office workers stranded, their phones dead. Daniel didn't turn anyone away. Soon, they were a chain of over 20 people, moving through the blackness guided only by one flashlight and Daniel's steady voice. Every step tested him. His knees ached, his palms sweated, and the weight of responsibility pressed on his chest. He kept thinking of his own daughter, Emily, home alone in their small apartment just a few blocks away. He had promised her he'd be home by dinner. Now he prayed she was safe. When they finally reached the ground floor, the glass entrance was sealed by emergency shutters. Panic rippled through the group. Daniel forced himself to think. He remembered the maintenance tunnels, a service exit most employees didn't even know about. "This way," he said, pushing open a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The air was musty, the concrete walls damp, but it was the way out. He led them through winding corridors until, at last, they emerged into the cool night air behind the building. Fire trucks and police cars lit the street in flashing red and blue. The children clung to him, their small faces lit by relief. The teacher hugged him, trembling. Even Martin Graves stood in stunned silence, looking at the janitor as if seeing him for the first time. The next morning, the blackout made headlines, but so did Daniel. Reports called him the janitor who led a rescue in the dark. Martin Graves approached him in the lobby, not with his usual hurried nod, but with something almost like humility. "I owe you my life," the CEO said quietly. "And so do they." He glanced at the children nearby. "If you ever need anything, you come straight to me." Daniel smiled faintly. "Just doing what needed to be done, sir." But that night, when he went home and hugged Emily tighter than usual, he realized it wasn't about recognition or thanks. It was about showing up when it mattered, about leading with courage, even when no one's looking. Because sometimes, in the darkest places, the only light people have is the sound of your voice.